thank you all very much for coming out to have this discussion today. It's lovely to meet many of you. The thing I love most about this job is the people that you run into, like the experience I had yesterday on the Leinster House plinth with just such warm, lovely people, That's the thing that people love about the Irish, is that we're just such gregarious folk, and that extends obviously to our politicians like Ruth Coppinger and so on. So, no, honestly, all things considered, I am quite glad to be fobbed off by yet another politician and to have an event that I was due to speak at be cancelled by the venue. And the reason I'm delighted about that is because, as you grow as a media outlet, you start to go on TV shows and panel discussions and things like that, and I was starting to worry that it was looking like I'd gone native or something, or been assimilated by the Borg. So it's nice to have a kind of to be pushed out of the tent again. It kind of was like it felt like old times. It's funny that this was cancelled, given the fact that I'm not going to be talking about anything remotely controversial. They probably assumed that I was going to come out like some kind of WWE haymaker, jumping off the top rope. But in reality, I thought it would be interesting to just literally look at incontrovertible official crime statistics from the CSO. Because when you have conversations about is Ireland safe, is it not safe, the state of crime in the country, you get a lot of he said, she said, subjective opinions and feelings. Somebody might live in one area and they say, oh, Jenny Mac, it feels so dangerous, you feel like you're taking your life into your hands walking up the street. And then somebody else who lives in another area might say, well, I don't feel that way, or I feel perfectly safe. So it's also subjective. And of course, there's a lot of gaslighting as well when it comes to this, where people try to tell you that your own eyes are lying to you and that the dodginess you're experiencing in your neighborhood is just some imagined phantom that has never actually been proven. So I decided to go over, I can't fully take credit for this. A lot of this work was done by my gripped colleague, Gary Kavanagh, who did the laborious and intensive work of pulling together all of the CSO stats going back about 20 years. And I'm going to be focusing on Dublin in particular, not because Dublin is the only part of the country that matters. Of course, there's a different picture in the rural areas and so on, and they matter too. But Dublin being the capital city and the epicenter of the country means that a lot of trends radiate out from there. It's kind of a good bellwether, and it's easy to collate figures smack bang in the middle of the country. So with that said, the official messaging that we get from our esteemed politicians, the aforementioned gregarious politicians, is that Ireland is safe. By European standards, everything's grand, and that's why the Justice Minister, Helen McEntee, had to walk up the street with a platoon of armed police officers with her. Everything's fine, and that really, you should just stop whinging. Of course there's a problem. Every country has a crime problem. That's par for the course. You're never going to eliminate crime, but then when you compare us to other countries or the south side of Chicago, we're basically doing grand, so relax. And you want to be fair, you want to be honest and say that is true in many ways. There are certainly many more dangerous countries and cities than the one we live in. But with that said, it's not so much about comparing Ireland to every other country in the world. Just being safer than Mogadishu is not a great achievement, in my opinion. I would like to set the bar a little bit higher than that, personally. I don't know about you. So really, the question is, where do we stand compared to how we used to be? If you go back 20 years, as my colleague Gary has done and as we're about to get into here, what does the picture look like comparatively compared to the Ireland of old? And when you look at that, you'll find that total reported crime is slightly down. When you take into account all crimes of all sorts, they are down in Dublin. But many very serious offences that cause people to feel unsafe, that cause people to feel apprehensive, like assaults, harassment, drug offences, threats to kill, blackmail, extortion, and sexual violence, have risen sharply over that 20-year period. So, for example, to give specifics, this is kind of a broad category, but attempts or threats to murder, assaults and harassments, taking that as kind of a standalone type of crime, are up 114% during that period. Assaults causing harm are up 72%. Threats to kill or serious harm are up over 2,400%, so whopping figure there. Shoplifting is up over 70%. Drug driving, blackmail and extortion are all up over 1,800%. And these are not abstract crimes. Like you don't want to have any crime in a society. Obviously, it's all bad, but these are the kinds of crimes that make you consider moving out of an area. If your local shop is constantly being robbed, if people are constantly being threatened and assaulted in the street, that's the kind of thing that'll like lower your property value. So these are the crimes we mean when we talk about a feeling of being in an unsafe country or community. And the Gardaí themselves admit, we were having correspondence with the police about this, we were asking them for their reaction to some of these figures, and they said, quote, "Ireland in 2025 is a very different society from that at the turn of the century." Yeah, well, I'll say, thank you, I didn't really need the police to tell me that. It's a society of more drug use, more intimidation, more organised crime, and in many ways more violence. Again, to give the whole picture, to give a realistic perspective on what we're talking about, some of the crime figures are positive. For example, murder is down, and that's mainly due to the fact that Gardaí have particularly focused on stamping out gangland activity, because that's where most of the murders were taking place historically. And so the police, when you see the emergence of organised crime feuds and things like that, that obviously grabs headlines, the public puts pressure on the authorities to deal with it, and then the Gardaí have redirected their focus to dealing with that. And I'm not going to say that's a bad thing or an insignificant thing. Obviously, who could complain about less murders in a society, but I think it's important to also note that given that the majority of the murders, or a significant proportion of them at least, were drug dealers killing each other, that's actually not the kind of thing that impacts ordinary people on a day-to-day basis. If 50 drug dealers kill each other one year and 100 drug dealers kill each other the next year, that's bad, you don't want to see it, it's unfortunate. But if you're just a law-abiding citizen going about your business, you're probably not going to be too impacted by that directly. So, and strangely, and this part I will admit I don't have the exact figures, I haven't compiled them, I'm sure somebody could do it, and maybe I'll do this after this, but I don't know if you have noticed anecdotally that there does seem to be an increase in random nihilistic crime, which I don't think, at least in my experience from just looking at the situation, it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that we would have seen as much of in prior eras of Irish history. We all understand, there's certain crimes that you find reprehensible, but you understand them. If a guy mugs you for your wallet, you go, okay, well, that's an evil thing to do, but I know why you're doing it. You want my money. That makes sense. Or if somebody breaks into your house to steal your stuff, same thing. Whereas when you see somebody, like we saw in Stony Batter, running around with a box cutter, just slashing anybody they see, or going outside a school on Parnell Square and attacking a load of children seemingly at random, that's the kind of thing that has no rhyme or reason to it, and I feel like we are seeing an uptake of that. At least it seems anecdotally that's the case. So, ironically, the reduction of murders, although murder is a very serious crime and that is a welcome trend, I'm not sure how much that actually does to put people at ease when they have these sorts of concerns. Some people are obviously going to say that this can be accounted for by population increase. Naturally, if you have more people in a society, you're going to have more crime. Obviously, that's the case. The population during the period we're talking about has increased by around 30%. A 30% increase in people doesn't account for a 1,800% increase in crime. So that will, of course, have some role to play here, but it really does not paint the full picture. People will say, oh, well, there's better reporting of crime. That's actually not the case. We know that according to this kind of victim survey that the CSO occasionally does, many crimes actually go unreported because people say, according to the surveyor, that they don't trust the police to actually be able to do anything about it, and they have a sort of a what's the point attitude. So about 29% of assaults are actually reported according to the data that we have from the CSO. And 40% of Dubliners say that antisocial behaviour actively worsens their lives. So with that said, we do have many serious crimes objectively rising. We have many minor crimes which are essentially being ignored, and again, much of the data seems to indicate that people's confidence in the police is falling when it comes to some of these things. I've had this experience, I don't know how many of you have had this experience, where something happens to you, it's not terribly serious, and you do have that, why would I bother reporting this? I'd rather just move on with my life than, it's not like I'm going to be putting Batman on the case and he's actually going to get to the bottom of it. I'm probably just going to waste a whole lot of time and end up none the better for it. So with that, all I would say is that when people ask, is Ireland safe? The real question is, safe compared to when? It certainly is not safe compared to the Ireland that many of us grew up in, and that's a simple statistical fact that nobody can really deny unless they want to say that the CSO is incorrect. I think it's really important we can get into, maybe during the panel discussion or in future discussions, why this is happening, what could be done to prevent it, all the sort of analytical opinions that you could have about something like this. But I think first it's important to just establish the baseline fact that it is a more dangerous society and we need to get to the bottom of why that is and how to fix it. So thank you very much for your time.